Buying my first house was a dream I worked on for years. It is not a huge place, a modest two-bedroom house with a small yard. The yard is my favorite part. After long days at work, I sit outside with a cup of coffee, looking at what I built for myself. Every inch of that house is a reminder of the sacrifices I made to get here. I spent years saving for the down payment. I worked double shifts, skipped vacations, and lived as cheaply as I could. When I finally held the keys in my hand, it felt like I had achieved something no one could take away. Then there is my brother, Steve. Growing up, Steve was the golden child. Everyone loved him. He was funny, outgoing, and always the center of attention. If Steve got in trouble, my parents made excuses for him. Boys will be boys, they would say. When he wrecked his first car, bought him a new one within a week. When I wanted a car, I mowed lawns for 2 summers and bought an old, beat-up sedan. It is not that I hated Steve, but I could not ignore how differently we were treated. If I got a perfect score on a test, my parents said, "Good job." If Steve passed the test he barely studied for, they threw him a mini celebration. If Steve got into trouble, they laughed it off. If I even thought about breaking a rule, I was grounded for a week. Over the years, Steve's charm stayed with him, but so did his irresponsibility. In the past 5 years alone, he has bounced between 3 different careers. Each time he lost a job, he had an excuse. His boss did not like him. The company was unfair. The workload was impossible. My parents believed every word and stepped in to help. They paid off his debts, let him move back in, and gave him whatever he needed to get by. Meanwhile, I kept working, saving, and trying to build my own future. About 6 months ago, Steve lost his job again. He moved back in with my parents, who, as usual, took good care of him. They cooked his meals, covered his bills, and let him take over their guest room. I tried to be supportive. I offered him advice and even helped him write his resume. When he said he needed money to hold him over, I sent him a few $100s, but it felt like throwing money into a pit. Steve's not making any real effort to get back on his feet. Then, last month, Steve and his wife, Amanda, announced they were expecting a baby. My parents were thrilled. They immediately started talking about how wonderful it would be to have a grandchild. They planned to convert their guest room into a nursery and began buying baby clothes. I was happy for Steve and Amanda, but I also noticed something concerning. Every time someone asked where they planned to live or how they would handle expenses, they dodged the question. Last week, Steve called me and said he needed to talk about something important. I assumed he wanted advice or maybe help with baby supplies. But when we met, he dropped a bombshell. Steve told me he and Amanda needed a place to live and asked if they could move into my house. At first, I thought he meant temporarily, just for a few months until they got back on their feet. But Steve made it clear. He wanted me to give him my house permanently. He said it made sense because I live alone and do not need a big place. He said I could easily move into a smaller apartment and that I should want to help since he is starting a family. I was stunned. I told him no. I worked too hard for this house and I was not going to give it away. Steve got angry. He accused me of being selfish and said I did not care about my future niece or nephew. He said family is supposed to help each other and that I would understand if I ever had kids. When I still refused, he stormed off. The next day, my parents called. They said Steve had told them what happened, and they were disappointed in me. They said I should be more understanding, and that it was only fair for me to help Steve since he has a family to provide for. My mom said, "You do not need a big house. Let Steve have it. You can find an apartment." They even offered to help me look for a rental, as if that would make it better. I told them no. This house represents years of hard work and sacrifice, and I am not going to give it up. My dad said I was tearing the family apart over something small. My mom said I should want to help because that is what family does. But to me, this is not small. It is my home. Now the whole family is upset with me. Steve will not speak to me, and my parents keep calling, trying to guilt me into changing my mind. They act like I am being cruel for standing my ground. But I cannot help feeling like this is another example of how Steve is always bailed out, while I am expected to pick up the pieces. Part of me wonders if I am being too harsh. Maybe I could let them stay temporarily. But another part of me is tired of always being the one who has to compromise. Steve has had my parents' support his entire life, and I feel like they are asking me to enable him yet again. Am I wrong for saying no? Should I give up my house to help my brother and his family? Or is it time to stand my ground? Let me know, because I honestly do not know if I made the right choice.